Welcome to our webinar called Starting a Farmer's Market, a case study from South Carolina. Our presenter today is April Jones with the Pinehurst Farmers Market in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. I am Larissa McKenna, FACT's Humane Farming Program Director, and I'm going to be moderating the session. So thank you all for being here. So let me just start with a minute or two, take some introductions. So before we dive right in, Food Animal Concerns Trust or FACT, we are a national nonprofit organization that's headquartered in Illinois. And we work to ensure that all food producing animals are raised in a healthy and humane manner. We accomplish this by supporting humane farmers, such as yourselves, promoting policies that make food from animals safe and healthy for people to eat, and then also helping consumers make informed food choices. And I have the honor and the pleasure of directing our humane farming program, which works with livestock and poultry farmers all across the country. And we offer grants, scholarships, personalized materials, mentoring, and of course, webinars on a variety of fascinating topics. And I just want to note that we will be launching a new financial training program for farmers this fall. So keep an eye out for that, and feel free to visit our website to learn more about all of our services. So this time I'm just delighted to introduce our presenter, April Jones. April advocates for her community as part of the food justice and food sovereignty movement. She's passionate about community, about gardens, about farmers markets. She's a writer, photographer, a mother, a blogger, a YouTuber, a recipe developer, a book reviewer, and more. She's also a past scholarship recipient from FACT, which is how I got to know April originally a couple of years ago. It's certainly a pleasure to have her with us today to share her experience and her perspective and expertise. So I think without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, April, so that you may begin your presentation. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to listen and to chat and to hopefully get some answers to your questions. So I'm going to go off camera and I will still be talking. So I'm April Jones. I run the Pinehurst Farmers Market. And you can see this is actually a picture of me and my beautiful garden in the Pinehurst neighborhood in downtown Columbia, South Carolina. So we are the capital city, which is very exciting for South Carolina. And we are a downtown neighborhood. So we are about a mile from the Capitol, the State House of South Carolina. So when I moved into my neighborhood, it was beautiful and thriving and had two fabulous grocery stores, which is why, part of the reason why I moved to the Pinehurst neighborhood. Then, over the course of 6 months of me moving into the neighborhood, both of our thriving grocery stores closed suddenly. And so that left a huge void in our community. We went from a thriving community with lots of grocery store options for fresh fruits, vegetables, and more, to not having any of those options. And so we were essentially a food apartheid community. And so food apartheid means the structuralized system of food access. So structurally, not from our community, but from outside forces, we no longer had the food access that we needed to be healthy. And so an amazing book called Food Genocide talks about all the ailments of society. So if you have high crime, you should look at your food sources and what kind of food do you have in your community? It directly impacts your crime rates. If you have test scores that are low in your local school system, go back to the food. What kind of food is offered in your school system? What kind of food do the students have access to when they go home? And so those are all kind of important things to think about. You can go on down the line with the ills of society, but a lot of it is directly correlated to our food and our food access and the types of foods that we are eating. So with that in mind, I started the Pinehurst Farmers Market because I wanted to create an opportunity for my community to have access to high quality, high value, high nutriently dense food. And thankfully in South Carolina, we have a lot of beautiful farmland. So we have a lot of local farmers, small farmers who are available and able to come to the Pinehurst Farmers Market. And it's really been an awesome opportunity for our communities to come together and to meet and to discuss about our food system and to discuss about how our food is impacting our communities and how it's impacting our community health. So with that in mind, thinking about our community health, COVID-19, we all know, is been so incredibly deadly in our states and throughout the country. And a lot of the rates of COVID are directly impacted to your food access. And if you have access to healthy vegetables, that really is a help to prevent COVID, and it's a help to recover from COVID, making sure that your body is receiving all the nutrients that you need. And our zip code in the Pinehurst neighborhood in downtown Columbia, South Carolina, is 29204. And so when COVID hit our state, our community in Pinehurst in 29204 had some of the highest rates of COVID in the whole state. We were number one for a time, which was very shocking, but it also goes back to the issue of food and food access. So when I saw the high rates of COVID impacting my community, it called upon me as a person of the land and a person working in the food system to really start remedying that situation. And so we started the Pinehurst Community Action Nonprofit. And with funding from our community and our community members, we were able to give out food boxes directly to our community from the Pinehurst Farmers Market. And so that was a wonderful way to support our farmers who are doing amazing work, but also to support our community and to show solidarity between the two and say that during this time of crisis, we are here for you. We want the best for you, and we want you to eat well and to work on your health in a way that is helpful for everybody, because COVID-19 has impacted everyone, and everyone's health is very, very important, especially with the pandemic in mind. And so that was a really wonderful opportunity for us to bring our community together and to discuss and to talk about how we can become stronger and more resilient using food access as a point. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is the Pinehurst Farmers Market. This is some of the food that we have available. So we have sweet potatoes, we have onions. Those purple things are actually muscadines. So they're in the grape family. And they're something that's very popular in the South. We also have eggplant and tomatoes. So we have everything that's seasonal. I think that's the great thing about a farmer's market, is that it allows the community to have access to fabulous food, but also to learn about the seasonality of the seasons. And, you know, there's a time when you get sweet potatoes, and there's a very short time where you get muscadines. Blackberries is a short season. Blueberries is a very short season, and strawberries are very short as well. So it allows our community to have conversations about the seasonality of food, when food is in season, when it's not. When you're in the grocery store, you really don't have an opportunity to have that kind of realization, because you can get strawberries year round, you can get blueberries year round, etc. And so that's been another great opportunity for us to engage and to teach our community about food and food access. So here you can see these are some of the graphics that I created for the Pinehurst Farmers Market. I suggest if you want to start a farmer's market, it's important to make sure that you are marketing and talking about your market and showing and showcasing the produce. So you can do that through a Facebook account. You can also do it through Instagram. You could do a YouTube. And you can also look at apps that help you to create the graphics. And then you can upload those graphics onto the social media platforms. I think a lot of times in the sustainability, we don't always think about marketing, but my point of reference is even if no matter what age you are, I'm in my mid 30s. So for me, it's like the Kardashians. I always think about the Kardashians. They're such excellent marketeers. They're really good about getting their message out and getting promotion for that message. And so whenever I have a media concern or a marketing concern, I just kind of look at the Kardashians and see what they're up to and how they're amplifying their message. So one of the ways that they do that is through social media, through Instagram, and there's many ways for marketing, but that's just my one point that I could say about marketing is that it is a lot of work, but you have to think creatively and really showcase the product that you have that's available. So this is actually a proclamation from the city council because we had National Farmers Market Week. So this was very exciting from the city of Columbia. That's another way that you can promote and market your farmers market. You can also think about collaborative relationships that you can have with your government, whether it's at the city level, the county level, and the state level. So if you can think of those three ways of interacting with your government, whether it's getting a proclamation, whether it's seeing if they have funding available, and just seeing what kind of partnerships that you can create. And a lot of times, if you're creating your partnership with a government entity, if you go to your city and they are not receptive to your message, then you can go to the county. And if the county's not receptive, you can go to someone at the state level. And then once you have buy-in from one of those three, the others will come along very quickly. And so if they say no, don't feel discouraged when you're working on creating the partnership with your local entity of government. You just have to keep going until you find someone who says yes, and then other people will come on board as well. So at the Pinehurst Farmers Market, we also have meat. We have vegetables, and then we also have meat, honey, eggs, and soap products. So when you're thinking of your farmer's market, it's important to think about what farmers do you have, and then what options do they have to give to the community that can be consistent and of high quality. And so at the Pinehurst Farmers Market, I think it's important to have a variety of vendors who are offering a lot of different things. It draws in more customers, and then it also creates some excitement and variety. So we don't just have a vegetable vendor, we don't just have a meat vendor, we have a variety of vendors in between. And sometimes with your vendors, they may miss some days, or sometimes that you have the market. It's important to, in my mind, to be flexible with your farmers because they're very much like an artist. And you have to be very sensitive and caring of your farmers and creating that relationship and having open communication and working with them in a collaborative way. And so it's important to have your standards and your rules, but it's also important to have that relationship and the accountability as well. So this is another picture of the market. We have, as you can see in the back, we have some of our jams that are homemade from the farmers. We have some of our beautiful South Carolina tomatoes and peppers. We also have some plums. So there's a huge variety there. Another marketing technique that you can use is, as you can see, we have a recipe card. So it's important sometimes for people to know how to create a dish that you have at the market. And so you can use a recipe card. That's one thing. Or you could put it on your website or in your newsletter, recipes on how to create wonderful dishes. That's another way to retain your customers and to create some excitement. So we have our beautiful peaches, which are also in season. Peach, yes, we love the peaches. And then also we also have our shrimp, which is something else that we offer at the Pinehurst Farmers Market. So we also have the shrimp, which are amazing and delicious and fabulous. And that also creates some excitement because the shrimp season is very short, but they're also very, very delicious. And so if you are a cook, you can cook the items that you have at the market and then promote them on Facebook, Instagram. That's another way to draw in customers at the market. So this picture on the left is example of the food boxes that we've given out to the community. So this was in the winter of last year, and we had our kale and our cabbages and mustard greens. And then on the right, we have some more produce. We have cow peas, which are spectacular, and those are also something that's very local. Another thing for a farmer's market is that you can really promote the locality of your area. So the local special things that your community grows or creates, you can really showcase that at the farmers market, and it's such a great way to build community and cultural food history. So these are pictures of the Pinehurst Farmers Market. Another great thing about having the Pinehurst Farmers Market is that we have created partnerships with our local government, our county government, our state government, our federal government. And this is a picture of our local coroner. Her name is Nada Rutherford, and she is the coroner for our county, Richland County. And so that's been a great collaborative way that we have reached out to local politicians, because we always need support of our local elected officials. And the Pinehurst Farmers Market has been a great resource for our local elected officials or people running for office to come talk to constituents, and then also talk about food access, talk about healthy eating, and talk about how they can support our local farmers in our community. And it creates direct relationships for our farmers. They can talk to the coroner. We have Joe Cunningham, who's actually a Democrat running for governor of South Carolina. He's coming to the farmers market tomorrow to meet with constituents, to talk about food access, and to talk to our farmers. And so the farmers market is a great meeting place, and it's a great place for people to come together across party lines, across their political ideology, and to just meet and discuss the issue of food, food access, farmers, farmer training, and resources that our community and our government can give to farmers. So when you think of a farmer's market, think of it in a very holistic way, and think that everybody has to eat every single day. And so every single person is impacted by the work that you do. And it's so, so important to support our farmers and to support food access for all. So now we're going to go into some questions that have been emailed, and I'm sure any other questions that come up, I'll be so happy to answer them. So the first question was, a local church is trying to open a nonprofit farmers market in their area, and they want to know about how to organize it and what steps they can take. So the first step I would say, thank you so much for the question, I appreciate it. you have to really think about A through Z with your farmers market. So you have to think about, who is your audience for the farmers market? What kind of people are going to be coming? Who are you marketing the farmers market? What consumers are you going to market it to? And is there a need in your area for the farmers market? So if there is a need for the farmers market, the biggest thing that I've seen with farmers markets is that you have to have a location. It has to be centralized. It has to have easy access. And then preferably it could be a donated space or a space that has very low cost. So that is what I would say. And if you have a donated space, I would suggest that you would, maybe sign 2 to 3 years for that space so that you're not putting in a lot of effort and then, next year you have to find another space. So that's the biggest thing. Then you have to also look at your state and local laws, what they say about farmers markets, where to have them, those sort of things, and zoning. That's also very important. So those are the first steps of organizing it. Once you have all of that done, you also need to think about your farmers. I think it's important when you're starting a farmers market to start small. So maybe have 3 to 5 farmers, and then have conversations with those farmers about, the hours, what hours are going to be accessible for them to come in. And then I would also say not to have the farmers market for too long, because your customers like a long period of time, but the farmers are investing that time into the market. And so the more time that they invest, if you don't have enough customers to support that, then that is going to create bad feelings on the farmer's part. So I would say have a short time period, and then make sure you have your farmers, and then go from there. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of organizing, but you just have to take it step by step by step, and then also think long term about problems that may come up and try to mitigate those problems at the beginning. So one example of that would be making sure you have enough farmers and that they're consistent, and then make sure you mitigate for that, and then also the location, and make sure that you have it for an extended period of time so you can really build up the momentum of the market. So the next question I have is, how do you know if a market is saturated, too many markets in an area? So that's a difficult question to answer, but you really have to think about, is there a need? Is there an area of town that there's a need for a market? And then who those people would be coming to the market. I also say if you have, a market that's really doing well, I would go and support that market and try to grow that market even larger, and then talk to those people about maybe splitting off or creating your own market. That is one option that you can pursue, because if you are a committed customer, loyal follower of that market, it allows you to kind of troubleshoot and see what are the dynamics of this market, and is there an actual need for an additional market. Another question that just came in was, did I receive any state or local funding? So I did receive some funds from my city of Columbia to help with the food access issue during COVID. And I have not received any funds from the county level or the state level. And so that's an excellent question. I did receive funds, but if you're starting a farmer's market, it's good to think about funding options that your locality would have to support you. That's important, especially with food access, with COVID. That's an important question. So another question is, what can I supply my community that would buy from me? So they have lavender products. So for that, I would say that lavender is such a great, fabulous plant. There's so much that you can do, and there's so many nutritional benefits to lavender. And I think this is a good time for lavender. People are stressed, and lavender is a great relaxer, and it helps you also to boost your immune system. So I would think of it more in the terms of the ways that you think lavender can benefit your community at this time. And what I think about is, health impacts. Everybody wants to increase their health right now. It's very important. And you can think about ways that you can increase people's health using lavender. So that's also an important thing to think about with your farmer's market. Think about all the ways that your fruits and vegetables can increase the health of your customers, and talk about that, because that is super important to people right now. Everyone wants to increase their immunity and increase their health. So that's a very important thing to think about. So another question is, sometimes there's ego and mistrust and competition that creeps in amongst the vendors. And what can you do to mitigate that? So I just recently did a blog post with the Farmers Market Coalition about creating a more cooperative and kind environment. And so you really just have to start researching and thinking about ways that you can build team and solidarity with your market. And also cross promotions are a really great way to do that. So if one person is selling fresh ground flour and another person is selling eggs, you can talk about ways that you could, do a combo package, maybe a little discount, or ways that you guys can cross market together about how to make beautiful things like breads, pastries, pancakes with those two products. And so cross promotion is a great way to do it. Also, just maybe doing some team building activities amongst your farmers markets, and then also trying to just create a collaborative environment where you guys are all connecting. So whether it's, I have children you two have children the same age, and connecting them on that level and just connecting them more on interest. But things are competitive. People do want to make money. And I think the best way to mitigate that is to make sure that everyone is making money because you have a successful market and people are coming. But that is something that always happens. There's always conflict, so you can't avoid it. But you definitely can take steps to help to resolve those conflicts as they come up. So, are there grants and grant writers available to rural communities starting a farmer's market? I would say yes, there are a lot of resources right now, especially for our rural areas. And I would look to the federal government. They have a lot of grants occurring right now. Farm Commons is another organization that you can reach out to. They have the legal aspect of farming and farmers markets in mind. Farmers Markets Coalition, FACT, all these groups are available to help you and to assist you with your grant making process. But I would say that there are a lot of grants right now at the federal level. You should also look at your state level, your county level, and see what's available. But there are resources and there are grant writers that are available. And you can just reach out to those following organizations that I said, and they should be able to tell you of good suggestions for grant writers. So someone else is considering doing a co-op of small farmers in New York City and New Jersey. So I think that's an amazing idea. Co-ops are so much fun and so amazing. I was actually born in San Diego, California, and some of my fondest memories are going to the co-op and getting the fruit roll-up. I'm sure you guys all know the healthy fruit roll-up. It was so delicious. And so co-ops are a great way for people to come together, bring their resources together, and to help assist their community. So I think it's a great idea. I think that you just need to make sure you have enough members and that everyone is doing their part, and that you have it structured where you have a board And then you have to think about the process of, are you going to just be like a private company? Are you going to be a nonprofit? Incorporating all that, doing all the legal aspects of that to make sure that you are aligning it with your values and your mission. And I think that's really important. And then also finding, a location. Are you going to just have like a pop-up location, a physical location? Thinking through all those things. And I also would look at the model of co-ops around you. There's so many fabulous co-ops across the country, and talk to those people and say, what were your steps? What were the problems that you encountered? And, creating a resource across the country of co-ops would be a great also starting point in talking to them, because they have the answers. They've already done it. And they can help you avoid some of the pitfalls. But I think a co-op is always fun and exciting. So liability, that's another very important aspect. And you need to look at when you're thinking about liability for your farmer's market, you need to look at your laws in your area, in your region of the country, and think about the best ways to protect yourself. And liability is a very important thing to think about. You can also talk to FACT, you can talk to Farm Commons, you can talk to the Farmers Market Coalition. They would be able to give you more detailed ideas about what kind of coverage you would need. And you can also talk to other farmers markets in your area and say, what insurance are you using? What have you found to be effective? And then go from there. But it's always important to know the laws of your area and your region. So someone wants to start a pop-up farmers market on their farm, and they want to know how this differs from starting a market on a publicly owned space. So one of the great things about the Pinehurst Farmers Market is it actually is in my front yard. So that is such a huge boon, and it's very exciting, but it's also very personal. People are coming to my home. So you have to just think about people will be coming to your home and to your farm. And how do you feel about that? Do you feel okay with that? And then also it also allows you more flexibility, because you can have the pop-up when you have availability. So it's a great idea in that sense. And you will have it super duper fresh. So that's a great point for marketing. You can market it as freshly picked 1 hour ago. So those are all positives for having a pop-up at your farm. And I think it's a great idea, but you just have to kind of think it all the way through about your availability and about people actually coming to your farm location. And how it differs from having a publicly owned space is that in the publicly owned space, you may have more rigid restrictions on the times, the dates for the pop-up, or if there's competition for another vendor at that space. So you have less logistical worries and things to think about if you just have it at your farm. So a person is asking about the location. They're asking about location was grandfathered in for a location for the farmers market 35 years ago, and they want to see how they can choose a location, but they want money now. So basically, sometimes there are places that a farmers market is there, and maybe the zoning laws have changed, and so because the zoning laws have changed, that person is grandfathered in, which means that they are basically given the grace of the old law, and everything continues as the same. And so that happens often across the country. And then sometimes if the farmers market, that particular farmers market closes, and then another farmers market comes into that space, then that ends the grandfathering process. So that is something that happens all the time with farming and land grandfathering. That's very, very, very common. So now things have changed, which is unfortunate, but that is something that is common. And you just really have to work with your municipal governments to really get a full understanding of how you're not just benefiting yourself, but you're benefiting the community good. And that's something that you should always promote and discuss and talk about fully. So those are the questions that I have. Are there any other questions?
So we just got one in on the sidebar. Well, first of all, thank you, April, for all that information. So we have a question that what items do you need to provide the vendors in the given space, such as a gravel lot or water, bathroom access, that those type of things, logistically speaking?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And you really have to think about your space. So my farmer's market is every Wednesday from 1:30 until 3 o'clock. And so since it's a short period of time, I really haven't had farmers having to use the bathroom. But when we have our children farmers, which we do have, they sell almond milk, they sell mint, oregano, and flowers. And so sometimes they do have to go to the bathroom. And so they just use my home. But that's something that you have to think about with your space. If it's a pop-up, then maybe there isn't bathroom access. If you have a public space and you have a long period of time, then you may have to think about bathroom access and things of that nature. So it just basically depends on the amount of time that you have and the type of market you have, whether it's a pop-up, if it's at your farm, or if it's in a public space.
And so I know that I posted the link to the blog you did with the Farmers Market Coalition. Can you speak a little bit more about what resources they have? Because they are probably the go-to for a lot of this, along with Farm Commons. I will say they're wonderful in the legal aspects. And actually, FACT will be hopefully working with Farm Commons this winter. So we'll be able to give some more of those resources to folks. But Farmers Market Coalition, what can they hook people up with who are interested in starting a market?
So they have a lot of resources. They have, I'm working with them on the anti-racism toolkit. So that's basically a toolkit for anti-racism practices, which has been very exciting work. And then they also have like a legal toolkit, which is outstanding. And so it basically takes you through all the legal hurdles. It gives you examples of, this happened at this farmer's market. A person fell and they didn't have insurance, and this is what happened, and this is what the court case said. And so they have all the different steps for the legal aspect. Farm Commons also has excellent resources with legal aspects of farmers markets and farming, and that's their job. That's what they do. And they're a nonprofit, and they're there to help you. And so both of those organizations give you a really great framework to work within. And then you can also reach out to them personally and contact them. But they have a lot of resources. They also have blog posts. They're just doing a little bit of everything. I'm talking about Farmers Market Coalition. They have a lot of resources for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And so I'll try to pick and choose some of those to send along to folks with some of the details. I had a question actually, and I don't know if this is something you can generalize or maybe you can just break it down, but how much does it cost to start a market? And if that's kind of a hard number to pull, what would be the main expenses that you'd have to consider?
So it can be expensive based on your locale. I'm in South Carolina, and so it's not the wild, wild west, but it's almost. So my expenses are a lot less than if I was in, I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. So if I was in Akron, Ohio, my expenses would be much more. So the things that, signage, that would be something that you would have to pay for if you want signage. If you wanted to hire a person to do marketing, that would be something. If you wanted to hire someone for grant writing, that would be another thing. If you have to think about your zoning laws, where can you have it? If you have a permanent location and they want money every month, there would be a fee for that. If there's electricity on the site, you'd have to pay for that. If there's water on the site, etc. And so it can really be an expensive process. If you are having it on Main Street in your town, your city is going to have to require you to have a permit for that. And if there's a lot of people, may have to hire a police officer for security. So you have to just think about that. That's a lot of expenses. Or you could just do a pop-up at your farm, and then they're not much expenses at all, maybe just signage expenses. So those are the kind of things that you have to think about, and insurance as well. So it just depends on what your objective is, what your laws are, which are so important, and what community resources do you have to help you? Whether it's someone who says, I have a vacant piece of land or I have a building and I'm just going to give it all to you for free because you're doing great work in your community. And you can always create partnerships to help with the funding of your farmers market.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about that even more next week when you're back, or 2 weeks from now, I should say. So would you say that most farmers markets form some kind of LLC or business entity or nonprofits? I mean, it's not just kind of a loose coalition of folks. It'd have to be something more formalized.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your cultural values of your state. So in South Carolina, everything is informal, and that's just our cultural legacy. But in other states, things are more formalized, and you have LLCs and you have nonprofits and other just business structures. And so that's something to think about. Like with my nonprofit, I decided to do a nonprofit because that was the best means for me and something that I felt comfortable creating. And I felt comfortable giving back to the community in that way. And then that just allowed for people to donate to me in a structuralized way that they felt comfortable and I felt comfortable, and there was accountability there. And so you just have to think about the best way for you and your business. If your goal is just to make money, then a nonprofit may not be the best way to structure your farmers market. It should maybe just be an LLC or just a business. So those are the things you have to think about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so local. I imagine it's hard to make those generalizations, but it's good to kind of have, like you said, the case studies and the examples of what people are doing in different communities.
And it's also great to talk to farmers markets like in your area or the next state over. So I've been doing a lot of work with North Carolina because we're all in the Carolinas. And they have a Black farmers market in Durham and in Raleigh. So it's just the one farmers market, but they go to both locations. And so I've learned a lot from them. They have fabulous marketing. They have great outreach. And so it's been really a great learning process to learn from them as well. And so you can learn a lot from your neighborhood market and then even a market in the next state over that's doing amazing things.
Great. Any other questions from folks out in the audience? Anything that you'd like April to elaborate on, or there's so many little pieces of it. And when did you start? When did you open?
So it's almost been 3 years now. The time is just flying by. I just can't believe it. But yeah, 3 years ago, I started the farmers market. And it was such good timing. You know how sometimes you do things and you're like, ooh, that was good timing. Because
You're ready. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the pandemic and, people were scared to go to the grocery store. And then they just had a nice open air place to get their vegetables. And so it was just really good timing. And then, we had high COVID in our area. And so we already had the market to give access to our community, and we could give out food boxes because we already had the market. And so it's been really good timing. And the food prices are going up. I don't know if we discussed that, but there's so many articles about the food prices going up. And that's a great way to communicate with your customer that, prices are going up. But at the farmers markets I've seen here in Colombia, the prices are pretty much the same. They've gone up just slightly on the eggs because the feed has gone up, but the vegetables have been the same. And so it's just a great way to establish relationships with our farmers because they're the ones that are growing the product. And then when you have that relationship, you can always work with your farmer. Like if you go to the grocery store and you say, I only have $5 today, can I still get this? They're probably going to say no. But if you go to your farmer, you have that relationship and they're able to help you out and show solidarity. And that's so important right now, especially with our food system and with global warming and parts of our country, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to supply the food that they have been able to in the past just because of the water crisis and the global warming. So it's really important and exciting time to be in the farmer market area because everybody has to eat and you have direct access to the food, and there's a huge need that's only going to grow just because of global warming and our food climate right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me finish up by just asking, and hopefully this doesn't put you on the spot, April, but it just occurred to me. If you could tell us maybe your top 2 or 3 lessons learned from kind of going through the process of opening this market and continuing it, what would you share?
Sure. So the one lesson is to create a collaborative base. So just to have like a very diverse customer base. And then secondarily, I would say to really eventually get the buy-in from your local government. I think that's really important. And just really explain to them the work that you're doing. And it may take a long time. It may take a year. And that's okay if it takes a year for them to understand the work that you're doing. But I think it's important to really inform them of the work you're doing and how you're benefiting your community and get buy-in from them. And then the third thing I would say is that there's going to be obstacles and there's going to be challenges, but don't be afraid of them. There are opportunities to rise to the challenge and to learn. And then you'll have more knowledge that you can give to someone else, and you'll have more problem solving skills for the next problem that's going to come up in the farmers market arena. And so that is the most important thing. There's going to be challenges, but you can make it through them and you're going to learn so much. And then also when you encounter a problem, sometimes it can be very isolating, but you should reach out to your network and let everyone know. So if you have a farmer that you have loved and you had a great relationship and they said, I'm going to retire, then just reach out to your network and say, what happened? And see who can help you to create another new relationship with a new farmer. And so people are happy to help and happy to be a part of the food movement, but you just have to let them know your needs.
Excellent. Well, yeah, that's one thing I've noticed a bunch during COVID is people really are working together and trying to pool resources and, and that's been working a lot, better than just doing everything individually. So I think that's wonderful advice. I think at this point, unless there are any other lingering questions, I'm going to just wrap this up with a couple of housekeeping items so folks know what's going on before we sign off. A reminder that immediately after this webinar ends, another screen will pop up on your screen, I should say. It's a short survey. If you could take a minute to fill it out, it's only a couple questions. That would be really great. Also, a recording and the slides will be available. I'll be sending that out in an email with some other links to some of the organizations and resources that were mentioned. And then they'll also be posted on our website. A quick plug for some of the other opportunities that we have coming up this fall, including some more terrific webinars. April will be back in 2 weeks, talk more about how you can promote your farm at the market and use partnerships and hopefully grow your customer base and get some repeat customers as well. In addition, next week we will be launching our new financial training program. So Stay tuned for details about that. I will be posting about it and sending out an email. We also offer scholarships to conferences, trainings, and other educational events. So something to keep in mind as you're planning ahead for the fall and winter. And those scholarships can be for either virtual or in-person events. So I will send links to all those opportunities in my follow-up email. But I think that's about all the time we have for today. Any closing thoughts you'd like to share, April?
Yeah, so I did see a person asked about the business side of running the farmers market. And so you really have to just structure it based on your budget. So if you have certain bills that you have to meet, then you need to really make sure that you are creating fees that support that, whether it's, fees for the farmers, things of that nature. And then also, other resources that you can use for funding, such as grants, city funding, county funding, state funding. So you just have to think about the bill part, how many bills do you have, and then making sure you have enough resources coming in to cover it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, April. It was lovely to have you, and I look forward to being back with you in a couple weeks. And thanks to everyone out in your audience for spending maybe your lunchtime with us or your early afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. So I hope that we'll be able to stay in touch and we'll connect again soon. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week. So goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye.